present colleagues here, all protocols observed, and of course, my dear colleague Hannah and Sam, thank you for being here today. Very important occasion for myself to be here, and definitely welcoming Special Representative of Secretary General, Director of UNDP, and all the colleagues, and of course, dear Toasefa, thank you so much. So we've been working, it's my fifth or sixth visit here, I believe. I've been here quite frequently, and mostly on two different portfolios. One of it is related to the humanitarian situation. I've been here just a week before on that particular matter, but also on the matters of follow-up on the peace and follow-up to the Koha agreement, and how we as UN can best support the federal government of Ethiopia and the interim regional administration in bringing the peace dividend together. And it's extremely exciting for me to be here today to say that we have found ground, possibility, technical capacity, courage, and resources to start this very, very important initiative, democratic governance reform. Needless to say that democratic governance structures are the foundation of the very peace, are the foundation of the democratic processes, are the foundation of justice, which we all seek. In that respect, I would like to congratulate everybody, particularly the team, which had worked so closely on making this project possible. So, what is the core of the project? And you will, of course, see the presentations, you will see the detailed details of what we envisage. But fundamental point is that we will create a nucleus here which will support implementation of the initiative. That will, the first objective will be our project office, which will support that initiative. The initial stage is 1 year, but it will go longer, of course. So, but in the initial stage, we will set up the project office, and we will develop programs for the 3 main streams. The number 1 is governance. And we will rally around how we govern, how we make sure that we manage better public resources and those which we bring from the international community to bring the peace dividend on the table. The second one is going to be related to justice. And it's very clear that about justice, about resolving the issues of justice and giving justice to the people, we will not be able to move fairly forward. So the justice reform is a must. And the third is civil service. And civil service is a very comprehensive program as well. Not only we need to make sure that we do have the right people in right places in all veredas who will support the reforms, who will look after the basic needs of the people, be it health, be it provision of other social service such as education or any other matter, water, sanitation, and so forth. We also need to make sure that we have the right people. We need to make sure that people are equipped with the skills, that they're trained. We need to make sure that when they exercise their duties, they do so in full accordance with the international established standards, practices, and they provide best services to our people. And they deserve it so much. So in the end, we expect that what will be delivered is, first of all, accountable and transparent system of governance, which delivers public services in effective, inclusive, and responsive way, that we will empower citizens to voice their concerns and actively participate in decision-making processes at all levels, and restoring the confidence and social contract at all levels, and strengthening mechanism to prevent and manage conflict and build peace, so that we actually do not descend into the conflicts, but we have the culture of resolving our disputes differently, and ensure that trusted justice and human rights institutions that guarantee resources across the Tigray region are in place. What I'm here today is to congratulate you, to thank you most sincerely. There was quite a lot of legwork. This was one of the things which was raised in our first meeting when I came here in August. So between the August and the end of the year, we worked quite tirelessly in developing that frameworks, establishing the partnership, This is just the beginning of the road. We will work hard to bring more resources to this particular initiative. But what I'm here to say is to signify to you my personal commitment to this initiative and assurances that we as United Nations will be with you along this road, that this important road it's just one of the steps. We will soon hopefully to come back with some more work on DDR and other important elements. Today we're looking into this particular component. So attention continues to be with Tigray, with the people of the Tigray, to make sure that the lives and livelihoods are restored. But livelihoods without justice, livelihoods without governance wouldn't mean much. Therefore, this is a complex approach. United Nations is with you, is with the people of the Tigray, is with the federal government and interim administration together, hand in hand, to resolve all pending issues. My sincere appreciation to all of you, my sincere congratulations, and our solidarity will stay in place. Thank you so very much.
The Interim Regional Administration of Tigray, Your Excellency, Lieutenant Colonel Tadesse Wareda, Your Excellency, General Satkan, forgive me if I don't pronounce your surname properly, Gabratensa Atua Sefa, my colleagues Ramiz, Sam, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It's a pleasure to be with you this morning in better circumstances than my last visit, which was in 2022. I'm glad that today we are able to be here for the launch of what is an important project. And it has taken us some time to be able to bring all of these pieces together. But I would like to say that this initiative essentially was conceptualized by you. This is not the UN prescribing something for you. This is a program that was conceptualized by you. And we have tried our best to ensure that we have had the acknowledgement of the federal government that this is an important program to undertake, that we have had colleagues from the country team, Ramiz and Sam, who have been very committed to bringing this program to life, and today we are in a position to get started. When I met His Excellency this morning, I said, after the cessation of hostilities agreement negotiations in Pretoria, I didn't want to come to Tigray for a photo op. I wanted to come to Tigray the next time when, as the UN, we were in a position to be working on something substantive with you. Because I think that that is where, as an organization, we demonstrate that we can actually do something of value. This is very much a program that will be supported intensely by the UN country team. Ramiz joined us here in Ethiopia about 7 months ago, Sam just at the beginning of this year. But I am very glad that I have two colleagues, senior colleagues in the UN country team who have decided and who have committed to help to bring this program to life. And I think that we have a very good confluence of, at the moment, understanding, support, commitment, the beginning of the finance that we need for this, but we will have to continue to make sure that we generate additional resources so that we can achieve the goals that were set out within the concept of how you wanted to achieve this important issue of governance reform. Ramiz has already spoken about the key areas that this program is going to cover. Now, in the process of explaining how this program is going to work, you will see that in response to your initiative, we have tried to come up with something that is comprehensive. But I can tell you, having been in government before, plans are one thing, the implementation is another. And I would like to believe that there is the commitment also on your side to make sure that these are implemented in such a way that it generates the change that you want to see. I would like to assure you that my colleagues Ramiz and Sam will continue to have the support of my office, which is a regional office, not a country office. And therefore the legwork actually belongs to the UN country team. But to the extent that It is necessary, and to the extent that my colleagues would require the support of my office, I'm very happy to work with them, because this is building on the outcomes of the cessation of hostilities agreement. We all know that the implementation of the agreement still has a number of outstanding issues. But that notwithstanding, we cannot complain about what we don't have, but focus on making what we have better, so that at the end of the day, we do have the kind of outcome that will deliver the dividends of peace for the people of Tigray. Once again, I thank you very much for inviting us. It's a pleasure to be here, and I very much look forward to continue this journey with you for as long as I am still here in Ethiopia. Thank you very much.
Excellency, Ms. Hannah Tete, friend, special envoy for the UN, of the UN for the Horn of Africa, Mr. Ramizel Akbarov, UN resident coordinator, and Samuel Long, a UNDP representative. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to take this opportunity to thank Hannah, Ramiz, and Samuel, and my colleagues in the interim administration for using this opportunity not only to launch this program, which, as Hannah has indicated, has been in the works for quite some time now, but more importantly, for taking this opportunity to try and reflect on the progress that we have made in the implementation of the cessation of hostilities agreement. The cessation of hostilities agreement is a work in progress, as Hannah has rightly indicated. We have achieved significant progress, but no matter how significant that progress, it's never good enough as long as still there are substantial issues that need to be resolved, and resolved in a manner that would fully protect the interests of the people of Tigray. We still have million plus people living in very horrible conditions in IDP camps. We still have Tigray territories that continue to be occupied by people who should not have been in the business of occupying these territories. We continue to engage with the federal government on a number of issues, but we have a long way to go before we can fully say that we have achieved the implementation of the Pretoria Agreement. But like she has rightly pointed out, it's one thing to expect the fullest possible implementation of Pretoria, but entirely different to just keep complaining about things when, in fact, we can still engage in the sorts of activities that will help in addressing some of the most significant damages that have happened to the people of Tigray. One of the challenges that we are facing today is not just humanitarian, which is quite understandable, but the destruction that was brought on Tigray as a result of the conflict is not just about the destruction of infrastructure, but more importantly, the sub-national structure has been all but destroyed. And the issue of governance is something that needs to be taken seriously in Tigray. Tigray, which as a state prides itself on having a 3,000 years history, now faces a situation where all state institutions have all but collapsed. So the governance issues, justice, civil service reform, all those things are not going to be addressed in the kind of way they could be addressed in other parts of the country or in other parts of the world. We have tons of things to do because the kind of destruction that was wrought on Tigray as a result of the war is quite immense, and it is really encouraging that the UN system is going to be part of our efforts to address this challenge. By doing so, of course, we're not only ensuring that the cessation of hostilities agreement holds, but more importantly, peace is deepened by making sure that people see the benefits of holding on to peace, and that's what my friend Ramesh referred to as peace dividends. Of course, we have a number of issues to deal with, governance issues, justice, civil services have been issues that have been on the pipeline. Of course, administration, Tigray regional administration, before the war and even after the war, during the war, has at least been grappling with the issue of addressing governance issues, addressing justice issues, including justice sector reform, the huge issue of civil service reform, but mostly we've been long on sloganeering and short on performance. So if we have to take this post-war situation as an opportunity to exploit, and then it will help us address this challenge in a manner that would not lead to yet another failed initiative, but more importantly, by bringing together all the stakeholders that have a vested interest in making sure that this really works, will be in a position to not only deepen peace, but also avoid all sorts of challenges that could lead to relapse into conflict. So Tigray will be doing its part in making sure that peace is the only game in town. And of course, it's the only game in town as far as we're concerned. But by taking this opportunity as a chance for us to build on the promises that have so far not been fulfilled, we'll be in a position to achieve progress in the sectors of governance, justice, and civil service. Like I told you, there have been efforts throughout the last 20 or so years. Like I told you, there have been slogans in this regard, but most of them have failed to prove, have failed to achieve the kinds of objectives that will have satisfied the interests of our people. We continue to face rather serious problems, emergency humanitarian situations, and of course, not just the UN system, but the international community has to be part of the solution. There have been efforts here and there, and I cannot complain about the kinds of efforts that have been in place, but the kind of emergency situation we are facing in Tigray, although protestations otherwise are still there, are going to threaten millions of people. And if we are going to address the specter of famine that is staring us in the eye, coordinated effort on the part of the international community, the federal government and the regional government will be quite in order, and we, in our part, are ready to do whatever it takes to avert the disaster. And it's our hope and expectation that the federal government will continue to make good on its promise to be part of the solution, not part of the problem. And I would like to take this opportunity to call on the international community, the UN system, to step up whatever efforts they have been undertaking in order to avert the kind of disaster that is around the corner unless we act and act soon. We have other issues to deal with. The issue of livelihoods, but of course, this is quite a priority as far as Ramesh and his team are, and I have every confidence in their commitment to addressing whatever challenge Tigray continues to face, not by setting up parallel structures that will take up the slack from the very institutions that are supposed to work or supposed to be helped to work, but by making sure that the sub-national structure that has all but collapsed as a result of conflict is supported in such a way that Tigray will be in a position to discharge whatever obligations it has on its own. So whatever capacity building schemes you have in place will come handy if we are going to address the challenge we continue to face. And it's my hope and expectation that you will continue to make good on your promise in this regard as well. Of course, the provision of social services, including education and health, come front and center when it comes to the provision of public services in general. So Tigray, whose institutions have been severely affected, will be greatly assisted when it comes to corralling every support there is in making sure that education and health services are still our priorities, and of course they should be your priorities as well. Food security is another area we should continue to work together, but the most important concern for us is we have to make our institutions work so that whatever we do is going to contribute to the improvement in those areas. So any failure in making our institutions work in this regard is not going to help us in resolving the perennial problems of food security and making our institutions work through improvement of governance, through improvement of justice, and improvement in the public service and civil service should contribute to our efforts to address the challenge of food security, the challenge with regard to the provision of social services such as education and health. Finally, I would like to thank Hannah and her team. Hannah has been very instrumental in helping us achieve the Pretoria Agreement, although she was often forced to leave the room while we were discussing issues because my colleagues in Addis Ababa were not particularly excited about the presence of what they used to call outsiders. But despite the pressure otherwise, Hannah's persistence in helping us achieve that progress was quite instrumental, and I have every reason to believe that she'll be here with us all the way through. And I understand why she's been dragging her feet to come here until such times that she has something substantial to offer to the people of Tigray. But as a warning, I will tell you, you still have a long way to go before you can rest on your laurels, because we still have tons of things to do together, even in making sure the Pretoria process is fully implemented. And I will continue to call on your support, on your support personally, and on support of your good offices to make this happen. And we'll have tons of things to do in the weeks and the days and weeks to come. So I rest assured this is not the only substantive thing you will be called upon to contribute to the betterment of the people of Tigray. And once again, I would like to promise on behalf of the interim administration of Tigray, we will do everything to be equal to the task that is imposed on us by circumstances, and we will strain every nerve and muscle to make sure this process works. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Master of Ceremony. Your Excellency, President Getachew Radda, the President of the Interim Regional Administration of Tigray, Excellencies, Vice Presidents of the Regional Administration, and also principals from the UN agencies, all protocols observed. My name is Sam Conan. I am Team Leader OIC of the Democratic Governance and Peace Building Unit, UNDP. As the Master of Ceremony was saying, today it is an exciting day for all of us because of many reasons, but I believe that one reason should be the anchor, and that is the beginning of a new journey which is embedded in the past, but which is going to give us the way to look forward. My role today is to give you a brief summary of this big program, which is going to launch today. We call the program the Democratic Governance Reform Program for Tigray. I don't have to go to the details of the challenges because we all know that where we stand in this region. The conflict, the war, the internally displaced people, the drought, the devastated infrastructures at subnational level, even at regional level, and also the inadequate capacities of in the justice sector, in the civil service. There are many challenges which we can put in the list. But I would say, in a nutshell, that this region needs a comprehensive support. That's why this program is initiated. What we intend to do in this program, there are 3 outputs which the region has I think, believed and also promoted to really get support from the UN agencies and other development partners. The first output is this project and this program requires a dedicated office, project office or program office, program support unit. And the first output that we will be committed to offer is establishment of a project office and staffing. This staffing will be composed of international and national staff. The international staff will bring experts, knowledge, experiences from elsewhere, while the national staff will be the anchor to give us the basic realities on the ground. Secondly, the staff, while they are engaged in the project office, they are expected to do an intensive assessment of in the justice area, rule of law, justice area, in civil service, and of all more significantly in the governance area. So this intensive assessments, this extensive assessments, which give us the real picture of the situations both at region level and at subnational level, will lead us to start designing a full-fledged project document in 3 areas: justice, rule of law, democratization, and civil service. So this is the guidance. This is the overall consensus between UNDP and the interim regional administration. So what we are expected to do is, as UN and UNDP, we have to support delivering these outputs. While doing this, the key principles that we will follow is gender sensitivity, because we know that women, the marginalized groups, children are the most affected in the war because of the drought, because of displacement, because of the destruction of the civil service, destruction of the health services, education, etc. So we give a priority as a key principle to gender sensitivity. Secondly, while doing our job, it may not be easy to really check sensitivities in terms of conflict. We don't want to leave no one behind, and at the same time, we don't have to have kind of grudge or any complaint from any party. So do no harm is a key principle and the foundation for this program. Synergy with other projects, with any project that is implemented in the region, particularly with the peace support, with the DDR, and any other development program, that must be linked with what we do, because we don't want to duplicate efforts, duplicate resources, and at the same time, we need to be sure that this program contributes to the most significant, most pressing problems of the region. The other is, there is a need also to link with national efforts, policies and strategies and plans, because linking this program with the national efforts will help us to mobilize resources, mobilize capacities, and also see possibilities of getting support from the national counterparts. Independence and neutrality is another key principle. This program requires utmost independence and neutrality from any influence, negative influence. Positive influences are always acceptable, but the independent of neutrality of this program may help to really see the realities on the ground, realities in the in the implementing partners, realities also in the community. So that must be one anchor point which we believe that this program should apply. The last one is inclusiveness. Again, we'd like to make sure that the program includes all that are affected by the war and other factors. So the key stakeholders in this program would be, of course, the interim regional administration, the resident coordinator's office, the UN special envoy, and also development partners and UNDP. Future partners of this program. There is a long list. The regional government, Bureau of Justice, the Civil Service Commission, Supreme Court, Police Commission, etc. Why we call them future partners? Because this must stay until the extensive assessment is completed and also the project documents are designed. But we believe and understand these are the most key stakeholders, the most important key stakeholders that must be included and considered in the new program development, at the same time implementation. So we are thinking that based on the guidance from the regional government, this is a one-year program which will start probably in March 2024 and will end in 2025 March. So we are expecting to mobilize $5 million to support this program for the outputs that I have mentioned before. And this is also the program management arrangement. There will be a board which will, be, which will be here in Brakhe. The leadership of key implementing partners that I have mentioned before, and the executive like UN and the regional administration, development partners will be members of the program management board. Others are, technical team and the program management unit. This will be also supportive technical bodies to the project management board. What opportunities do we have in implementing this program? We see that the commitment of the regional administration, where we have listened to the regional president today, that the regional administration is very committed to support the implementation of this program. We have also, I think, supportive environment and openness, which we think is very important for the not only development but implementation of these and similar projects. We know that there are, capacities in this region, previous experiences in managing this program. I was discussing with Engineer Asafa yesterday. He was explaining, not only yesterday but also the day before that, he was explaining the type of capacities and the potential that the region has in terms of implementing this program. And finally, the UN commitment. It was expressed by our principals, so that's also one big opportunity which we can exploit. There are some risk factors which we believe that they may affect, if not resolved, timely, and also, some of them are out of our control. But we believe that if timely mitigation strategy put in place, they may affect the implementation of this exciting program. This instability and tension, if there is any situation, other than what we see today, then there will be an effect on the program implementation. The global situation, the war in Ukraine, in Gaza, this may affect resource mobilization efforts for this program, including the rising tension in the whole. Inflation is another risk factor. From day to day. From today, if we go to tomorrow, there will be a difference in prices. So huge inflation rise in all circumstances that may affect also the program implementation. Drought and the resource issues. These are also the risk factors that we have identified, but we believe that certain mitigation strategies will be put in place. The timeline for this program and development of the concept note, that's already done, and the kickoff, the launching of the project is going to be done today. Now the establishment of the project office, it should start immediately between now and March. And then the comprehensive assessment after launching the project office, then we need to be sure that the assessment will be the task of the coming staff. So the 5-year program implementation plan will be developed after the completion of Output 2. So for us, next action would be to finalize the project document and to make it ready for signing. I think this should be completed in the next few weeks, probably until February 21. Then resource mobilization is an ongoing effort, and UNDP as a technical arm for this program will start preliminary preparations for the establishment of the office, as well as preparation of bringing staff, like developing job descriptions and some basic documents. That's the plan that we have in the technical committee. In fact, it was ad hoc until yesterday, but if it is launched today, then it's going to be a technical committee with full function and capacity, composed of technical people from the region and also from the UN. So thank you very much. This is in brief what the project looks like. Thank you.
I have to apologize or not, but sorry for the little bit of confusion. Mr. Getachew Reda, President of the Interim Administration of Tigray, and my colleagues in the Cabinet, the Interim Administration of Tigray, Mr. Natete, and all the colleagues from the UN, I welcome you to Tigray, and I appreciate not only launching of this program, but what you have done during the Pretoria Agreement in terms of bringing peace to the region. I fully concur to what Getachew have said earlier. I don't need to repeat that. Myself and the people of Tigray are indebted to your effort in spite of all the difficulties that you have faced at that time. For the benefit of local audience, I will make my, presentation or whatever it is in Tigrinya, so that I hope our colleagues from the UN will understand this. The program قدم له مس عناون كم زغلصته نو حيلو استجمري بناي وعلو بروسس كخيد نيرو ابعلتنا ترارادينا حساب اما خلاي منغست ديدنا ما خلاي منغستون تقبلونا دحرنا بنا يو ان سيستم كيدو نا يو ان سيستمون اساس غيرهم تقبلهم هذه بروجرام كنجمرلونا من خل درجه بزيحلو نا ያው ጊዜ ኮስት ነርዎ ቆሙ ተሰራራሓ ጊዜው ሲሉ ግን ናቦቱ መጽየሎ ናይቱ ጊዜ ሙሳድ ለጊዜው ንሽተ ዕንቅፋት ዝፈጠር እንተኾነ በቀጻልነት ናራ ሓልዩ ንኸይድ ይሕግዝ እዩ ዘለካ ሪሶርስን ሓይል ሰብን ሒዝካ ሓደ ጊዜ ምስተጀመረ ተዓንቂፉ ደው ዝብል ዘይኮነስ በቀጻልነት ዝኸይድ እዩ ኢንፋክት ናይቱ ፕሮግራም ትራጀክተሪ ኣብቲ ናይ ህዝቢ ዘሎ ኢንተሪም አድሚኒስትሬሽን ዕድመ ጥራሕ ዝውዳእ ኣይኮነን ካብውን ላዕሊ ዝሓልፍ እዩ እዚ እቲ ሓደ እንታይ ሽሙ ከምቲ ዝገለፅዎ ናይ ሓደ ዓመት ፕሮግራም እዮም ጀሚሮም ዘለዉ እዚ ናይ ሓደ ዓመት ፕሮግራም ሓደ ስራሕ እናሰራሕካ ጎኒ ንጎኒ ኤክስቴንሲቭ ኮምፕሬሄንሲቭ ዝኾነ ኣሰስመንት ንምግባር ተባሂሉ ዝተሓሰበ እዩ እቲ ፕሮግራም እንታይ እዩ ዝብል ከምቲ ዝረኣኹሞ ናይ ዲሞክራሲያይዜሽንን ናይ ጋቨርናንስን ስራሕ ኣሎ በቲ ህዚ ንሓደ ዓመት ኣሰስመንት ንምክያድ ተባሂሉ ተቐሚጡ ዘሎ ሪሶርስ ጥራሕ ዝውዳእ ኣይኮነን ገፊሕ እዩ ግን ደረጃ በደረጃ ጉዳይ አሰስ እናገበሩ እናግፍዕዎ እናውሰኹ ዝኸይድ ፕሮግራም እዩ ዋና ዓላሙ ኣብ ትግራይ ሰላም ቀጻል ክኸውን ልምዓት ብዘተኣማምን መንገዲ ክኸይድ ምሕደራና ዲሞክራሲያዊ ስርዓትና ክመሓየሽ ኣለዎ ከምቲ ዝመጻናዮ ኮይና ይኮናን ክንከይድ ዘለና ደረጃ በደረጃ እዚ እናመሓየሽና እናመዓረረናዮ ናብ ዘበናዊ ምሕደራን ናይ ዲሞክራሲያዊ ስርዓትን ክንኣቱ ኣለና እዚ ንምግባር ኣብዛ ናይ ህዚ ናይ ጊዜያዊ መንግስቲ ዕድመ ክንሰርሕ ንኽእል ነገር እንታይ እየን ኢልና ሓሲብና ባዕልና ዘውፃናዮ ፕሮግራም እዩ ቅድም ኢሎም ናይ ዩኤን ሰብ ስልጣን ይገልጽዎ ነይሮም እዚ ፕሮግራም ናይ ባዕልና ፕሮግራም እዩ ካብ ኩነታትና ተበጊስና ግን ሓደ ብግልጽ ዝቀመጥ ዘለዎ ነገር ክጅመር ከሎ የድልየኩም እሞ እዚ ውሰዱ ተባሂሉ ዝመፀ ዘይኮነስ ንዓመታት ኣብ ናይ ፓርቲ ይኹን ኣብ ካልኦት ፖለቲካዊ ውድባት እናተገምገመ ዝጸንሐ ናይ ዲሞክራሲ ጸገም ኣለና ናይ ፍትሒ ጸገም ኣለና ናይ ኢንክሉሲቭ ዝኾነ ፖለቲካዊ ስርዓትን ምሕደራን ጸገም ኣለና እናተባሃለ ዝመፀ ደረጃ ብደረጃ እናቐረፍና ክንከይድ ካብቲ ዝበፅሕናዮ ቀልቀል ጥፋት ዝዓቢ ነገር ክበፅሐና ስለ ዘይኽእል ደው ኢልና ሓሲብና እዚ ነገር እዚ ነመዓራርዩ ኢልካ ተጀመረ ብጊዜያዊ መንግስቲ ትግራይ ተጀመረ ተጠየቀ ማእኸላይ መንግስቲ እውን ሕራይ ሒድሉ ኢሉ ፈቃድ ይሁና እዚ ስራሕ እዚ ንምስራሕ ገንዘብ ፍልጠት ስለ ዝሓትት ገንዘብ ፍልጠት ኣኪብናስ ሓደ ግዜ ምስ ጀመርናዮ ደው ከይብል ብቐጻልነት ክኸይድ ዝኽእል ስርዓት ንምጅማር ተባሂሉ ተሓሲቡ ተገበረ ነገር እዩ ኣብዚ ናይ ጊዜያዊ መንግስቲ እዋን ኣሕፂርና ንሓስቦ ናይ መጨረሻ መወዳእቱ ኣሳታፋይ ዲሞክራሲያዊ ግልፂ ዝኾነ መረፃ ኣካይድካ ህዝቢ ትግራይ ናይ ባዕሉ መንግስቲ ክሻብ ዘቕውም ዘሎ ግዜ እዩ እቲ ናይ ግዜ ሆራይዞን ኣብ ጊዜያዊ መንግስቲ እዋን ውሽጢ ኣብዚ ዝምስረት እዩ እቶም ኣብ መሬት ዝቕመጡ ለውጥታት ግን ኣብዚ ጥራሕ ዝሕፀሮ ኣይኮኑን መንፀፍ ኢና ነንፅፍ ዘለና ካብኡ ድሓር ቀፂሉ ዝኸይድ እዩ እቶም ዝስርሑ ስራሕቲ ክልተ ዓበይቲ መንገድታት ኣለዎም ሓደ እቲ ናይ ጋቨርናንስ ተባሂሉ ዝፅዋዕ እቲ ናይ መንግስቲ ስትራክቸር ምዕራይ ናይ ሲቪል ሰርቪስ ምዕራይ ናይ ክሪሚናል ጃስቲስ ሲስተም ዝብልዎ ናይ ፍትሕን ናይ ፖሊስን ናይ ፀጥታን ኣካላት ስርዓት ምዕራይ ናይ ምሕደራ ስርዓት ምዕራይ እዩ ዝኸውን ኣብዚ እዚኦም ዝዕረየሉ እዋን ቀሊል ዘይኮነ ተኣኪቡ ዝፀንሐ ሕማም ኣለና እቲ መንግስቲ ተሸኪምዎ ዝኸይድ ብዙሕ ሕማማት ኣለና እዚ ጉዳይ እዚ ስኡልካ ከም ዝሕሸሉ ኢልካ ዝድርበ ነገር ኣይኮነን መብዛሕትኦም ሂወቶም ንህዝቢ ትግራይ ዝሃቡ ተጋዲሎም ህዝቡ ንምግልጋል ዘለዎ ሰባት ዘለዎ እዩ ኣብቲ መንግስቲ ዝኣክል ቦታ ከይህልዎም ይኽእል ይኸውን እዩ ከመይ ጌርና ኢና እዚኣቶም እግር ነትክሎም ዝብል ሓደ ኣካል ናይዚ ፕሮግራም እዩ ናይ ሪትሬንችመንት ፕሮግራም ኣለዎ እዚ ፕሮግራም እዚ እቲ መንግስቲ ኢፌክቲቭ እናገበርካ ተመው ዝፀንሑ ሰባት ክንዝኣክል ስራሕ ዘይብሎም ሰባት ናብ ትርጉም ዘለዎ ናይ ባዕሎም ናብራ ዘሸንፍሉ ንሕብረተሰቡ ኣስተዋፅኦ ዝገብርሉ ስራሕ ምስራሕ ሓደ ኣካል ናይቲ ፕሮግራም እዩ እቲ ዋና መንገዲ ግን መንግስቲ ዲሞክራታይዝ ምግባር እቲ ናይ ፍትሒ ስርዓት ካብ ናይ ፖለቲካዊ ፓርቲ ፅዕንቶ ነፃ ክኾን ምግባር እቲ ምምሕዳር ብሰፊሕ ናይ ህዝቢ ተሳትፎ ኣሳታፋይ ብዝኾነ መንገዲ ናብ መሰረታዊ ዝኾነ ናይ ዲሞክራሲያዊ ህንፀት ዝኣተወሉ መንገዲ ምግባር ሲቪል ሰርቪስ ሰብ ብፍልጠቱ ብኽእለቱ ዘቕምጦ ኣስተዋፅኦ እናተሓረየ ንህዝቢ ብቑዕ ሰርቪስ ዝህበሉ ብካሊእ ወገን ድማ ዕቅን ዘይብሉ ወፃኢ ንኡ ንኽነውፅእ ዘይንግደደሉ ተኡ ንሸከሞ ዘለና ወፃኢ ብካሊእ መንገዲ ሃንድል ንገብረሉ ኩነታት ዝርኢ እቲ ካልኣይ መንገዲ ካብዚ ውፅኢሉ ዝኸይድ መንገዲ እቲ ናይ ዲሞክራታይዜሽን ዝበሃል መንገዲ ማለት እዩ ጋቨርናንስ ኤንድ ዲሞክራታይዜሽን እዩ እቲ ናይ ዲሞክራታይዜሽን መንገዲ ድማ ነፃ ሲቪል ማሕበረሰብ ዝዓብየሉ ጠንካራታት ናይ ተቃወምቲ ፖለቲካዊ ፓርቲታት ዝምዕብልሉ ነፃ ሚድያ ዝዓብየሉ እቶም ንዲሞክራሲ ብቐጻልነት ንዓበየ ክኸይድ ዘኽእሉ ማሕበራት ኣብ መሬት ዓቕሚ ፈጢሮም ዝዓብይሉ ኩነታት ዝርኢ እዚኣቶም ክልቲኦም ተቐናጅዮም እቲ መንግስቲ ዝግበር ለውጢ ይኹን أفتو بحبرة سب درجة زقبر لوتي تمرت أنا غربك خيد كله ما كفحتي ناي بوليسي قدياتنا تلعلو سميت زقورلو أينا من قد يحشنا نبله سب حريو بتخكل زغمتلو عينت كونتات نخفتر زقبري UN إذا program زي اليوم أبزو program زي كان حجزكم من عيلو من علو هذه أما جمرة project office كنا قمنا صناعات كنا كايدنا إذا قد يدينا من فصام تعيزة اللي تبايلو لحد ما نزغزل حموش تعمد كما جينا هنا implement الناقور ناين خيز الناقور program حزنا كن مسين عيلو منو program حزنا مسؤولوان لتي program أبتكبر مو علي زخون finance عقم سوون حزامكم مسيوم هذه بعلنا زوج أنا يا program بساتهم ريهم تقبلوا مو كن حجزكم من عيلومنا نحجز program نمجمر program نجمر له علتي لهم معلتي كم تزقلصوا عبي program يو أب تاريخ حزب تجري ون قليل زي كونه أستوى زهلو program يو يجمر يزلو أمود أتان خبزح نأخذ لاتنا تساتفو يحتتيو زخانة يخون نجار نموجودة ويزخانة يخون نجار نبلشوا توه هاي التحسب program يكونه أب تجري زد لنا نابتق أسألي ناي لمعتن ناي ديمقراسن ناي سلامن سرعات كن أتو ناز program زي مجمرو كم تخلهم زول هو بتعمي عبينا جريو بتعمي دسيل نيو ما ترى شو كان زو program زي نابزه بس هو زول درجة نخبت صح أم كبار أتو أسفا برها زجور استواسوا بتعمل عبيو تمسكون لي دلي كلاي زو program زين triple R تبعي للسواع ناي recovery reconstruction rehabilitation programmen زجانا نيوم جن حدا يكون أتي ناي physical economy وهنس أسرح زري قدمي يقول سأجمل لنا ناولنا نرى نايس نحنا جن زي عرنا يا program كنا عري سلازي ناي economy هنس أسرح تناول زشكمو زقبلو نهزمو ميلايز غيرو نابقوم نجار زبصح محاور ناي ريفورم مقبار سرحي كل يوم تقنا جيو حدا يكون وتناي تريبل آرز بهالبروجرام بعلو زحالة سباريت بروجرام اللو أسفاه زون بزي عبي قدلو سخوان خوي نجن كم زيلهم تقنا جيوم زخريوم زي بروجرام بمجمّارو يا خلاتنا هذا دسيلنا له خلاتنا دسيلنا له يا غني لي زي أكمل يدلي
dare to compete with my boss in terms of trying to brief and translate what's been presented here to our colleagues from the UN. But I think there is one point that I would want to mention before we go into our Q&A sessions, which predominantly would be in English, Tigrinya, or Amharic, whatever is convenient to you. The one thing that General Tsarkan mentioned towards the end of his presentation was about the link between what's being launched today and was for the formation of the interim regional administration of Tigray. It had already been launched in the 3 or 4 regions of Ethiopia, including Afar, Amhara. So we were latecomers to join the plan, but being that, upon review of what was planned and being executed by the other regions, we came out with a couple of reservations that we believed should have been included in the project designs. Normally, when you have post-conflict situations, damage caused by political conflicts, before we even talk about reconstruction, the first important question that they should have and that we chose to ask was, what caused the damage in the first place? Unless and until you understand the cause of the damage and plan to redress them, then there is no point building, because whatever you build in 20 years, we saw it being destroyed in less than 2 years. And that's what brings us to the issue of democratic governance reform. It was a political war. It was a political conflict that caused all the distractions that we survived. And unless and until we assess, identify our issues, and design a plan to reconstruct our democratic institutional systems, then there will be no recovery that's sustainable. So these two programs are linked. They should have been designed and run simultaneously. It's very unfortunate that one was delayed, but we are trying to compensate for that delay and bring them into one plan, into one platform. Ultimately, there will be one reform, rehabilitation, reconstruction, and development planning for Tigray. That's what we're heading on. It's not like all other reconstruction plans that we need. This is not the first time we did in Ethiopia. We did several times. Reconstruction and recovery plans are probably framed in 4 or 5 years. This may take longer than that because of the extensive damage that we sustained. So even if we get the money now, I believe it will take years to rebuild Tigray better than what we knew it before. So it is a long-term effort, and that's why we want to link it with the reform, with the recovery and reconstruction, and finally the development of Tigray. That's what I wanted to insert. And now, as I promised, it's free. You can ask in whatever language you prefer. When the need arises, we can try to translate them, or otherwise, we handle them as they come. Thank you. Over to you now.
The outbreak of locust happened, and second, followed by the poisonous war, and once again visited the desert locust outbreak. So continuously for about 3 years, famine happened in Tigray. So this is beyond the UN definition. In any case, we have to incorporate. There are so many things to incorporate in this program. So for having this wonderful project funding, I would like to express my appreciation. Thank you for that. And I have one simple question to Asafa. You already identified the key risks. So how do you consider how to mitigate these risks? Thank you. Key risks. So how do you consider how to management those risks?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am Sagran from the Tigray Supreme Court President. I have one comment and one question. My comment is actually the initiation of the program is homegrown. It is initiated from within, inside, and that the UN has supported that. So my compliments for the initiators. So the initiation, it was a very far-sighted initiation. So I would like to say my compliments on that. Having said that, I have one question. As you know, in any post-conflict situation, I'm not sure whether we are in post-conflict situation or not, but anyways, in any conflict situation, always what comes at the heart is the rule of law. So the rule of law is one of the important aspects in any peace-building initiatives. So as I can see from this initiation of the project, I can see that there is a lumping up of the justice sectors together. I mean the executive part, the Justice Bureau and the police on the one side, and the judiciary on the other, they are lumped up as a one. So wouldn't it be better to have a separate kind of initiation or program for the court system? The courts are very independent ones, so I think the court system in our region, as they currently stand, they are in a very sad situation. The infrastructure is well destroyed. Is it by design or I don't know, by default? I have no idea. But somebody who can go to the court system, he finds them in a very bad shape, So I think these kind of institutions, they merit their own separate kind of reforms, separate kind of initiations, be it in the resources aspect, both in human and material resources. So would it have not been good to have a separate from the beginning? Or why the lumping up together all the justice sectors together? Otherwise, as I said before, the initiation is very interesting. That's a homegrown initiative. It's not given by the UN. So again, my compliments to the initiators, also to the EM bodies, Your Excellencies. I am just very happy to hear that you gave us the freedom to come up with our choices. Thank you.
I really would like to thank those who took all the initiative and the support for this really interesting and timely, or maybe probably overdue project about reforming democratization, justice, and governance in Tigray. So I concur with the ideas said so far, but it's really difficult to give detailed comments because the assessment is yet to be done, and I think I could conclude we don't really yet know all the details, but for sure it's an overdue project. It's very important. It's locally initiated. It's interesting, and I believe it could help us transcend the problems we are in. Saying this, I have a few comments and questions. My first question is related to the mandate of this project. Again, because the assessment is yet to be done, I can't draw any conclusions, but I sense that some of the things being said or mentioned are, or at least they sound beyond the mandate of I would say, the interim regional administration, because the interim administration is supposed to stay for quite a limited time, because the people of Tigray deserve an elected government, and I think it's also in the law, election should be scheduled for some, in the coming, I don't know, within a year or so. So how can we make sure that the project continues with the ideas and assumptions we currently have? So this is, can't we focus on quite achievable things, like we have offices that are destroyed, we have lack of human resources in the areas of justice, public service, and so on. So we can educate people, we can refurnish the offices, and so on. We can improve the infrastructure instead of focusing on long-term sounding things like reforming the whole civil service or trying to bring about full-fledged democratization in this region. That for sure requires us to invest more time and energy. So I have some confusion in the mandate. It looks a bit extensive. It's very important. We have to start it now. And I'm sure we have lots of things that we can do at this time without the need for having an elected government and so on. The other thing is, for me, it seems there are some wrong assumptions from the outset. One of the things that I heard when Excellency Lieutenant General Tzadkan mentioned, in his remarks, is there is kind of assumptions that we will end up having a retrenchment, like laying off some human power from the government. And this assumption, I guess, comes from assuming that there are far more civil servants than required in the Tigray region. But with some research backgrounds, I know the number of civil servants in Tigray because they have been engaged for a long time in policy research in the area of governance. As far as I know, the civil service in Tigray has tremendous challenges. It's not capable, it's not well equipped, it's not incentivized, and I'm sure there are plenty of pressures, including political pressures. But the number compared to any any jurisdiction is not that quite high. Actually, I would categorize it in those entities with low number of civil servants compared to the total population or compared to the overall political objective. So I think things like retrenchment and so on sound for me a bit premature, and we have to be really careful with this kind of things, because as I said earlier, having an elected government is very essential for this kind of things, because the overall political orientation, the overall democratization orientation, the overall mandate of the existing government does really matter. So, so I think, well, the assessment will tell us what we are lacking and what we can do, what we can achieve, and what we can have, what we do have as strengths. But we have to be very careful from preconceived, premature conclusions, I would say. So for me,
4 minutes, that would do, I think.
okay, I'm concluding. So for me, there are lots of things that has to do with this issue at hand that we can focus on, including implementing Pretoria, including having an elected government and preparing for that, including raising resources for building the infrastructure. That is really helpful for further issues of reform and so on. Yeah, sure. Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'm head of the Innovation, Science and Technology of the interim government of Tigray. And I will talk a bit on technical levels, because over the years we have been away from digital communication systems, and without those technical jargons, we have been also devoid of any sort of communication from the outside world, and because of the destruction of all the communication infrastructures. So when we move on into the reform program of the government, I think I would prefer if you focus on the digital reform as well, digital transformation. Because without the digital transformation, we may not really address the issue of governance. As we look for e-governance, e-service, e-procurement, everything, e-justice. So we have to really look into the digital reform as well. If you simply separate the governance reform, we may not end up in a true governance system. So if we'd like to transform the digital system, it has to be included in the reform. Across the globe, there is a so-called digital divide, and our community should not be also part of it. In order to alleviate them from that digital divide, we have to include also the digital reform in the reform program. Thank you very much.
And damage that has befallen on the entire community of Tigray. And my university is one of the receivers of this immense destruction that befalled on all of us. And to be honest with you, when the Pretoria peace agreement or the permanent cessation hostilities agreement was signed, and going back some 15 months back when this agreement was signed, our expectation was really very high, particularly from the UN system, from donors, from different countries. We expected a lot in terms of redressing, in terms of support coming from these countries for redressing the damage that has been caused by this devastating war of 2 years. And we know for sure that the UN has, the UN Security Council in particular has deliberated on this issue of Tigray for about 14 or more times. And having known all this, we expected lots of support to come right after the signing of the peace treaty. But after 15 months of the signing of this treaty, no substantial thing has really come. We have to be honest on this. And my actually main issues are directed towards our UN friends. I would like them to comment on the fact that the expectation has been very high, and the people of Tigray are patiently, quietly, and peacefully waiting for something to happen in order to really make up some of the damage that has been there with us for a very long time. And we know for sure that the main solution to this problem comes from internal strength. And as far as that goes, our responsibility will be to keep our house in good order. That will be domestic responsibility. But external support is not, the contribution of external support, although generally supportive in nature, should not be minimized. And we expected a lot, given the extent of damage that has been there in the open for the whole world to see, but the support has been very much lacking. And still the expectation is there, because there are problems of post-traumatic stress, problems of infrastructures that have been damaged, and problems of bread and butter as well. And to the surprise of many of us, the food distribution was suspended for some time, although we know recently it has been started, okay? But we really expect substantial support to come to Tigray from different sources, and this has to be organized by the UN. This has to be led by the UN system itself. I was expecting, for example, kind of donors conference to be organized by the UN and for some support to come. So what suggestions do you have in relation to this? Because the expectation is here. People are simply quietly and peacefully waiting for something to happen to them, for some sort of support to come from the UN system, from big donors, international organizations, and what have you. But this obviously is very much lacking. And in conclusion, let me also recognize the contribution you made to the signing of the peace treaty, because that has been very much appreciated by the entire population. And we have seen its fruits, very much positive, very much good. But this has to be supported really with more efforts, more support. Although the most important factor, we believe, has to come from our own efforts. We do not discount the fact that our own efforts are of immense importance, of big importance, but we need support really to kick off many of the activities that need to be conducted. And thank you very much for giving me this time.
As has been said a few minutes before by one of my colleagues from the previous speakers here, I may not go through the details because I haven't heard anything about the details, but based on what has been presented here, I can raise two most important points, I believe. It's all about governance, and governance is, for me, it's all about the process of governing, the process of institutions and practices through which issues of common concern have been settled or are to be settled and to be regulated. And when we talk about democratic governance, we are talking about the openness, responsiveness, and accountability of these institutions and processes that could best serve the needs and preferences of the public. If so, now the bottleneck in democratization process in Tigray is, as we have experienced it in the last 30 or more years, is the party, the blurring of the boundary between party and the government. Constitutionally speaking, based on or according to the Tigray constitution, in Tigray, the government structure has 3 levels: the sub-district level, the woreda level or district level, and the regional level. But the party structure has one more structure throughout the government structure in Tigray. There is the party chair or the propaganda office, the propagandist at the regional level, and there is also an extended arm of this party at the zonal level, which is unconstitutional and non-governmental structure. And this zonal structure is very strong and has the capacity to control and monitor the Warada level or the district level government structure in Tigray. So it was not the government bureaucracy, but it was the party structure that was running and operating all Tigray issues in the last 3 decades. So how are you going? Of course, I have heard General Tzadkan had said that there will be a process of separating party and government, but this must start from bringing TPLF office out from the martyrs monument and from discarding the propaganda office at all levels of government, at the Warada and at the zonal level. So this will be the difficulty, this could be the difficulty in the process, I believe. And the second point I want to mention is, in the presentation, I haven't heard anything about the right to self-determination of the people of Tigray. It's all about democratization process, but this time is very unfortunate time than ever for Tigray, because in Ethiopia, Tigray is the only nation that has lost its right to self-determination in actual practice. I'm speaking this in practical terms. Of course, I know self-determination is a universal right for all nations and peoples, but in Ethiopia, self-determination is constitutional and it requires elected council. Now, Tigray has no any elected council. So, in the absence of elected council, I don't think we can practice the right self-determination, let alone the right to secession. So, I don't know if there is any point or any statement inside the document in the text, but according to or based on the presentation, I haven't seen any statement that could secure our self-determination. So how are you going to incorporate all these concerns of the people of Tigray? Thank you very much.
Our alliance is a consortium of 72 active local and international civil society organizations operating in Tigray. Thank you for the invitation and for allowing us to participate in this important workshop. Having said this, I believe that this program is very timely, very relevant, and necessary in view of the circumstance where we are in. I personally believe that this is very, very necessary. And I'm also comforted with 2 important things in the program. One, I'm comforted because this is a local initiative and an initiative of the interim administration. And I believe that this shows, this demonstrates a commitment of the administration, and this means a lot for me and for us in the civil society sector. And I'm also comforted by the inclusion of the civil society sector in the program as one of the featured partners. And I believe that this is very important and it has to be included. The sector has to contribute a lot and it has to be included. So taking this into account, I appreciate your inclusion of the sector in the program. And I have 2 comments and one question. My comment with regard to the civil society aspect of the program in particular, I cannot go to the details because the assessment is going to be conducted yet, and I cannot go to the details. I cannot give kind of detailed comments on the project details, obviously, like it was said by my colleagues. But I think this should not deny me to suggest some ideas with respect to the focus of the program as it should be. One is, I personally believe that the civil society sector, like any sector in Tigray, has been so much devastated, humanitarian or development or peace building aid. And I think there is no enough progress. We recognize that there are, improvements when it comes to localization efforts in particular, but, we are far from what it should be. For example, when it comes to the humanitarian funding, for example, the humanitarian summit 2016 and 2020 demands for allocating about 25% of the humanitarian aid to local civil society organizations. Unfortunately, I'm not sure if it can go up to even 3% or 2% in Tigray. I'm not sure. We appreciate the establishment of the localization working group at national level, but it's not doing enough, and it should be established at regional level as well. So it should be accompanied with these kinds of initiatives as well. Secondly, maybe let me go to the Pretoria peace deal as well. I just want to say a few words on it. For information, we conducted community dialogue about a month ago and it was about the implementation, the state of implementation of the Pretoria Agreement. I just want to mention to my colleagues from UN and OCHA in particular about the feeling of the community. We are so much, we have serious and deep concerns with regard to what we heard in the community dialogue session. There is a growing level of frustration, and it was beyond our imagination. The level of the frustration was beyond our level of imagination. People are even, starting to hate when you raise an issue regarding the Pretoria Agreement. And this is deeply concerning. And we have to focus on the full and, on the comprehensive implementation of the peace agreement. Otherwise, I think this initiative and so many other initiatives may not be able to see the light of the day unless we focus on implementing this. Okay, thank you. And my last question is, one of the principles that were put in the slides was linking with the national efforts, policies, and strategies. And my concern here is if it's going to be dictated by the national level, policies, strategies, and initiatives, whatever, I don't know if it's going to meet our demands and our contexts as well. Because we have been voicing so many things when it comes to, for example, the Transitional Justice Initiative, and including our opposition to the so-called domestic ownership of what you call the Transitional Justice Initiative. But our voices have not been considered in the final draft of the policy. So I think it should take our context into account. Thank you so much.
Thank you for presenting and thank you for all the initiatives. I will try to stick with the scope of the presentation. So my name is Alula. I'm from Salsawi Tigray. I'm the chairperson there. So my questions, I have 3 questions and 1 suggestion. In the presentation, I haven't seen, in the stakeholders or partners, I haven't seen the political parties in Tigray. I mean, they are very important, I think, in the civil service reform program, in the justice reform program, especially in the democratization. So it's very important to include the political parties in the stakeholders in this project. Second, well, I think these issues are urgent issues. I mean, they have to be done now, but the design only will take 1 year, according to the presentation, and the implementation will take, it says 5 years, but civil service reform, justice reform, democratization in Tigray is an issue of urgency. So I have some question regarding this because time is very of an issue in Tigray. So, well, in the design process, would you be able to see the experience of other regions so you can shorten the time that needs in the design phase? So, my question is this. The third is, it's said that civil service reform, justice reform, and democratization, well, here in the government, they would say that we are working with the UN to elevate these issues, but for the next 3, 4, 5, 6 years, there will be no democratization or civil service reform or in the justice sector. So my question is this going to be a consideration of duplication? So I think this is the main job of any government, elected or not. So I'm afraid that it may be considered the job of the UN instead of the government itself. So I think this is one of the main jobs of the government. It has to begin now, whether the UN, the effort of the UN has to be a plus, not the only and the main one. So I have a question of duplication here. My fourth question is about the resource. So you're saying that the design part only will take some $5 million, I think. So you are looking for this resource. So if you don't have the resource for the implementation, how is it going to be implemented? I mean, you have to have the resource by now, so it can be a guaranteed project. Otherwise, you are looking for the resource of the design, then you will look for the resource for the implementation, but these are very vital issues for Tigray. So I mean, in the issue of resource, we have to be very critical as it will definitely affect the implementation of the project. So these are my 4 questions. Thank you.
The people who also have raised about the catastrophic human disaster that we're seeing here, I know, and we all know, that you are involved and they are working hard to elevate our situations. Today is about launching one specific program which runs parallel and in so many ways complements all the efforts that we are doing in the implementation of the Pretoria Agreement, in managing our humanitarian disasters and whatever. So we may not necessarily be required to mix up stuff between what is being dealt somewhere else and the specific issues that we are trying to launch and deal in this program. So we may not necessarily deal with all the questions and comments you raised. And like I said, Ramiz, I'm not necessarily obliging you to respond or say anything unless you insisted. This being said, then I would want probably to revert to Tigrinya so that we would be able to express our views more clearly, not only to the audience here, but to the general public in Tigray as well. Because some of the issues are relevant not only to us, but to everybody in Tigray. I would probably invite my colleagues here to pick up whatever issues and questions they thought were relevant to them and would choose to react. But I'll get back to you soon with probably a summary of what I observed and how I would want to address them. Over to you. Do you have any specific issues, especially the risk, the budget, and the program?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I think we need important point which we should know is this program it's not a parallel program to replace any government initiative. It's just to support the regional efforts to maximize the programs, the resources, strategies, and plans that it has in terms of fulfilling those areas which are seen as deficits in governance, deficits in rule of law, in justice, and the whole issue of civil service, civil service in the region. That's why this program is initiated. And I would like to thank all those commenters and feedback given by the audience, those participants. One thing which comes to me is the risks, how the program would manage the risks that are mentioned in my presentation. Some of the risks that I have mentioned are out of our control, like the Ukraine war or the war in Gaza, etc., which affects the nation, the globe, and indirectly or directly the region, as it is true for any region in Ethiopia. The issue is how to manage, the risks. Well, managing risks is not easy, but it requires, series of consultations with stakeholders, with the interim regional government of Tigray, consultations with communities. From consultations, we'll be able to identify possible ways to manage some of the risks that I mentioned. For example, one of the consultations which I think would be on the table is how to really build peace, local peace peace at local levels. This may help us to really understand local issues and will help us also to understand how to manage conflicts if at all rising at local level. So one thing we have to be sure that these are homegrown issues which should be resolved by homegrown solutions. So this is a fundamental thing that we need to consider in managing the risks. Apart from that, I think the region has its own policies, strategies, and plans, which we need to refer whenever there are, risks that can be responded, that can be easily managed. That can be easily responded by the policies and strategies of the region. There are also issues around resources. For example, it's not easy to mobilize $5 million for this program for 1 year, but this requires, concerted efforts from every party, be it the regional government or the UN system. We need to have a kind of round table to mobilize resources from wherever it is possible. So this series of round tables within a year should be conducted to mobilize resources as much as possible. And there are some indications, but we have to have concrete information, concrete results in terms of mobilizing resources. So as I said, in terms of instability, tension, the political situations, these are factors which can affect the program, but this requires a series of consultations with the regional government and stakeholders. Another important point which came to my point, if you allow me, is the digitalization and modernization of processes in the region. This is very important, and I think we have to consider this as a cross-cutting input to this program. So wherever it is possible, modernizing the governance system, modernizing the civil service, modernizing the justice sector. This is, I think, one critical input that we need to consider in terms of making sure that this program achieves its objective. But the time for including and considering this aspect would be in the major program document development as well as in implementation. But the point is very, very important. Civil society engagement, civic space, I think it is clear that without civic engagement that this program may not achieve its objective. So I think the regional government would have its own policy, but from the outset I would say that the civic engagement would be one of the critical factors that we may consider, particularly in terms of supporting the region in oversight, in also monitoring and evaluation, and also to make sure that the voice of the local people is well received and addressed. I think these are the points that came to my attention. Thank you.
Say on the common issues. There are common issues that have been raised with regard to the implementation of the Pretoria Agreement, with regard to the humanitarian disaster that is facing Tigray, with regard to the issue of transitional justice, and so many issues. Those issues are of the highest priority in Tigray. And one thing that I would like to assure is there is no activity that is being considered above those that has been mentioned by the interim administration of Tigray. All the efforts are geared towards achieving a full implementation of Kwaha. We have already cleared several times the position of the interim administration of Tigray on the transitional justice. The whole institution, including one institution that has been established to deal with the drought situation in Tigray, is working 24/7. So those are not issues that has been pushed aside. Those are issues at the center of the activities of the interim administration of Tigray. But at the same time, as Hannah has said at the beginning of this procession, we cannot keep quiet simply without doing other activities while those are going ahead, while those are being implemented. In the first place, we have identified the problem we have with democratization and governance, not after the war, before the war. And there were attempts to reform this. The only thing that has been brought to the forefront now is this is high time that we start initiating and doing something. And at the same time, those issues are not aligned to, for example, the implementation of the full agreement of the Pretoria Agreement. It's not in antagonism with mobilizing resources for drought. It is not against fighting about the rights of the people of Tigray with regard to transitional justice. Rather, this activity reinforces the other activities. It is complementary to it. It has a long-term effect, and it is complementary to it. It doesn't go against some of the issues that you have raised, which are important. So what I'm trying to say is, I recognize the issues that you have raised as concerns are extremely important. I know for sure that the interim administration of Tigray is working on those, but at the same time, the issues that we are raising about reforming the politics and the governance of Tigray complements what we are doing with regard to transitional justice, with the interim administration, with everything. And this is long overdue. One thing that I would like to recognize is all of you have said this is long overdue. This process of reform is long overdue. I haven't heard anybody who says we don't need this reform. The only thing is people have raised the issue of priority. People have raised whether this is right or wrong. Some other people have said we have to include this. All of those who have been suggested, commented, are important. But to come to some of the issues, one issue that I would like to say is the UN have assigned an expert earlier called Mr. Ruben, who have been here. I presume he have met most of you, opposition parties, civil society, government offices, and he has taken a lot of input to initiate the program. And it is because of this that the UN team led by Ms. Anatete have come with a seed money to start the project. It doesn't mean that this is the end of the process. They have clearly said resource mobilization is going on. They are going to mobilize resources, while at the same time developing the program. This is how the UN works. It will continue to do so. Dr. Tsagai raised, for example, the issue of the problems that are associated with the court system and the overall judicial system. I think it's Dr. Tsagai will be one of those people who would be engaged in the program, in the design, and in coming up with the solutions. All of you, civil society organizations, opposition political parties, government offices are going to be consulted, and the program will develop on the basis of the requirement of the stakeholders. This is an important element that we have taken on board from the inception, and it will continue to be like that in the future as well. So this is a program evolving, and we have every reason to shape it in one way or another. Dr. Fassah raised two issues. One issue is the issue of mandate of the interim administration. The interim administration have full mandate to reorganize the government. There is no legal gap in this aspect. I know Dr. Fassah is a legal expert. He can come up with ideas in the future to tell us whether it is within the mandate of the interim administration or not. But we have discussed it in the interim administration, and we are very sure that it is within the mandate of the interim administration. At the same time, he raised one issue of wrong assumption, that is the issue of retrenchment. I have read his study, which was a very good study with regard to the problem of the civil administration in Tigray, which has been done before the war. I know his comments. He have said in terms of numbers, there are not enough civil society in Tigray. But in terms of quality, it's very poor. So this is work in progress. Retrenchment will come one way or the other. We will not be bothered about the recruitment of new entrants into the civil society, which could come as a requirement of the study. What will be of great concern will be, what do we do with the current existing civil society members if they are not capable of executing their task in the positions that they are in? It's where this retrenchment program is concerned. Whether it will come or not is something else. But for my UN colleagues, when you reform a civil society, there will definitely be people that will be pushed out of the civil service. What do you do with them? Do you tell them it's your fate and go ahead and disappear? No. It requires a huge amount of resources. So the plan have to consider whether the interim administration is going to do it or not is something else. But the plan has to consider this issue as well. When you mobilize resources, when you try to create an effective civil society, people who are not in one way or another can't stay in the civil society have to be helped, assisted to, so in case, one thing that I'm sure is there will be some reorganization. In the process of reorganization, there will be some people who will not be fit into the civil service, not because of political reasons, but because of their merit. And then we have to deal with them. That is why I have to indicate, not only now, but in our previous program as well, that this kind of a program will be required. So the assumption is correct. Who is going to be retrenched, who is going to stay, it's not a political decision. It will not be based upon, political membership. It will be based upon merit, meritocratic. But this will come, and we have to be ready for it. We have to mobilize resources for it. Dr. Kalali raised the issue of the e-government. This is one of the issues that is properly considered in the reform program. So as we go along, that will be included. Yared raised the issue of involvement of civil society. I presume you have been consulted by Ruben in the past days. That will continue. As I said, you will be considered as stakeholders, because that is one of the pillars of the foundation for a democratization of any society. So we cannot do without it, without involving the civil society. And I think Alula from Salsawiyan raised the issue of including stakeholders. That's what I'm saying. All opposition parties, all civil society organizations, all political parties, the ruling party or other parties, shall be included in the development of the whole program. He raised an important concern in saying that, the whole comprehensive study will take 1 year, and we urgently need the reform now. We should have done it a long time ago, and we cannot wait any longer. I think this is something that we see as we go along in the program. You have clearly said the governance of this project, and you have seen the involvement of stakeholders in the project. So as much as the people of Tigray are ready and required to implement some of the programs, of course I cannot speak on behalf of the UN, but the management, board of management and the governing structure of the project will come with proposals to implement some of the activities. But he has raised one important issue. Apart from the UN, what is the commitment of the interim administration for this program? I don't think there is any other proof to show that so far the interim administration is committed to this program. We have done our part, and we are collecting forces that can assist us to implement the program, our program that has been developed. As much as we have agreed, we have an agreement among ourselves on the need of the reform, which has been manifested today by most of you, by almost all of you, that this is a long overdue program. As long as this is maintained, then the commitment of the the interim regional administration will be higher every time. So it depends upon us, upon our involvement, upon our support to the program. And I thank you very much.
Mandate of the interim administration. And I don't see any reason why the interim administration would not be involved in such a reform process, because it is clearly part of our discussion. We're not talking about a process that will end up restructuring the entire state, because that requires a long-term commitment. But at least to make sure that the situation on the ground has improved to such an extent that the next elections would be free and fair is part of our job description as an interim administration. Not to go to the provisions establishing the interim administration, but more importantly, the discussions that preceded the establishment of the interim administration. Clearly, part of our responsibility is to undertake steps that are necessary to put in place a conducive environment for a long-term political transformation of Tigray. What sort of, in terms of mandate, if one has issues with regard to whether the interim administration is qualified to undertake such reform activities, well, obviously, something is missing, but that was clearly part of our job description, and we'll go ahead to undertake those reforms. But it doesn't, however, mean that those reforms are just about rewriting the entire constitution or stuff like that. And of course, whether the interim administration will last for the next 6 months or a year is immaterial, as long as we are undertaking a process that will be taken over by whoever is going to come into the picture once elections are conducted. So simply because an administration is not elected doesn't mean it will have to sit idly by while the situation on the ground calls for reforms. And it is my hope and expectation that this would definitely address the demands of my people, the demands of our people, and the demands of all political parties involved in this process. With regard to retrenchment, obviously, I don't know where the statistics come from. Even our own studies have made it clear that Tigray has one of the largest numbers of civil servants per capita. It's not just a matter of quality, it's a matter of quantity as well. You know, the president's office has more advisors than it can possibly imagine. I have more advisors in name than I can possibly depend on their counsel. I mean, I'm not complaining about the rather large number of advisors that I have. I haven't made use of most of them for obvious reasons. I hope to make use of their counsel in the weeks to come. But when you talk about retrenchment, it simply means rationalizing the presence of someone in a certain structure. If we have a director, I will give you an example of what happened in our bureau, the Bureau of Finance. We restructured the government in such a way that the procurement and whatever office would be a standalone agency. We were so overzealous about establishing a separate institution that we didn't even realize the fact that the most important function of that agency is still controlled by the Finance Bureau. And the director of a Finance Bureau, which deals with the procurement, whatever issues, would have to be consulted if that agency is going to operate independently. And I keep being asked whether that was plain stupidity on our part or some kind of misunderstanding. But obviously, I have difficulty justifying the existence of a separate agency whose main functions are being taken over by law by the Bureau of Finance. Either they have to be made part of Bureau of Finance, or we have to make sure that the Bureau of Finance relinquishes some part of its function so that this separate institution would continue to operate. As far as we're concerned, for Tigray, which is absolutely crying out for the kind of efficient utilization of resources, having 66 agencies, separate agencies, whose existence cannot be justified, is quite objectionable as far as I'm concerned. So if by retrenchment we mean laying off of thousands of people, I don't think that's going to happen. What we are talking about in terms of retrenchment is trying to make sure that people are in their right position, and we have to be able to rationalize their presence, the need for their presence in the first place. If there is no need for their presence, simply because some people are, we have people who are residing in Addis Ababa, maybe taking up other employments who still get paid. So we have to justify the need. Whether that will result in the laying off of 1,000 people or just a dozen people, that's immaterial. But if we have to structure it, we have to make sure that the objective of restructuring is to make sure that our institutions are both effective and efficient. How we go about it will require extreme care. That I understand. With regard to Dr. Dejan's issue of the TPLF office, the need to kick TPLF out of the martyr's office, I don't think it is the office that matters. I don't think as long as the TPLF is managing its own business, minding its own store, doing what political parties are supposed to do, as long as we are able to avoid the unnecessary mix, unnecessary interference of political parties with government matters, whether this is done by TPLF or Tigray Independence Party, if by some stroke of luck come to the corridors of power, is immaterial. What matters is whether we have managed to make sure that TPLF continues to mind its store and doesn't easily and freely help itself with government resources, has itself to government resources. This is what we are trying to do. But it doesn't, however, mean that TPLF as a party, which has a significant share in the government, will continue to exercise the level of power that is commensurate with its responsibility. If come next election, TPLF wins an election and then it will set up its own government, but still it would be in the best interest of TPLF to not easily and freely help itself to government resources and expect itself to be considered a legitimate political party. So it is incumbent upon TPLF to be part of this process to sort of disentangle this party government business thing. But I don't think it has to do with the physical presence of TPLF office in the Martyrs Monument. Having said that, yes, there are some structures that need to be cleared. There are, even youth leagues used to be part of the government structure, which are essentially part of party structure. So we have gone a long way in addressing some of these challenges, but we'll continue to see those challenges and we'll continue to address them as we go along. And I think the point is that the separation of party and government needs to be taken seriously, and it needs to be taken seriously by everyone, both those of us who are in the government and those who are in the pure party business. And I think it was Alula who raised the issue of duplication of efforts. My understanding is that, in fact, in my remarks, I clearly pointed out that whatever the UN system does cannot replace what we in Tigray are going to do and should do. And in fact, even their support should come in the sense of creating capabilities within Tigray in terms of supporting capacity building schemes, not by introducing a parallel structure which is not only cumbersome but also helps waste resources. And I think the UN organizations are very much clear on this. I often complain about, I'm not going to mention the name of that agency, I often complain about one agency which has a very annoying way of frittering away resources without the locals getting any benefit. I know Yared knows this. Yared is part of the people who've been complaining about this. But using local agencies does not necessarily mean shifting the burden of wasting resources from a UN agency to a local agency. So wasting resources should be as despicable when it is done by UN or other international agencies as when it is done by local organizations. So the most important focus should be capacitating local institutions, including government institutions, to discharge their responsibilities and functions, while at the same time helping them with whatever resources there is. And yes, I agree with you. We have to avoid duplication of efforts. I think I have taken more time than is necessary. Thank you.
Questions which were raised, one of it is related to the humanitarian assistance. So there should not be any assumption that if we are involved into programs supporting democratization, rehabilitation, reintegration, or any other programs, that somehow is not working. It's working. It's working. You want me to? Okay. So, and I will repeat. So, if this is somehow misunderstood, that because of our support to the programs of democratization, reintegration, rehabilitation, that this is somehow taking away resources from the humanitarian response, that's totally not the case. First of all, there is an intricate relations between development work on democratization, social sector management, and the humanitarian needs, and that is that in case we do not do adequate work on development side, and in case we are not properly managing the social sector, the humanitarian needs will only increase because we're not attending to the duties which otherwise would be recovered. Now, with regard to the highland drought situation, which was mentioned by one of the participants who asked the question, obviously the highland drought situation of this year is in the center of our attention. It has affected the north of Ethiopia, Tigray, Amhara, and Afar. We are very well aware of the situation. The humanitarian supplies to the region were steady. There is should not be any feeling that we are unaware of the situation in the sectors of nutrition, water, and sanitation, and we're responding to that. Now, of course, as you know, our humanitarian response plan for the last year was at about $3 billion for the entire country, and we were able to mobilize only $1.3 billion for the entire country because, as you know, there is a crisis in Palestine, there is a situation in Ukraine, and so forth. So right now we are focusing on raising additional resources to respond at scale. But the response is ongoing. The food distribution, as far as I know, are continuing. There are differences between the past practices. You know, we're implementing vulnerability-based targeting, which means that it is local communities and the councils which, in consultations with religious leaders and the participation of the beneficiaries block by block, who are deciding who is getting food and how much of it they're getting. So it's a new system. It's very different from the ones which existed before. So that also plays into the picture. And now just to assure you that our support to the humanitarian needs will continue. We will be there throughout the process until the drought is over, and to continue to respond to the needs of all vulnerable population in Tigray and in our areas in the north, which I mentioned, which are affected. And just to assure Your Excellency the President that United Nations would never waste any resource and would never be in any competition with the national institutions. Our prime target here is to be in accompaniment of the governance structures. I know the civil society, I know the media, I know the people of Tigray, to take this particular work into their own hands and to be, if you wish, behind you to support this important work. I thank you very much for your attention.
So thank you very much. I'll turn this way so that hopefully it process. We are not even a signatory on any part of that document. And I'm sure that all of you have seen it. That notwithstanding, as soon as the discussions in Pretoria were over, what happened was we met as the United Nations in Ethiopia to see how we could redeploy existing resources to be able to support the people of Tigray. Without going on a fundraising exercise to do this, but to start with what we had and to continue to mobilize resources. And we have been in that process throughout the last year. I hear you when you say that it is not enough. And I am sure that there are many people in this region who feel that we could have done more. And we wish we can do more. But when the comment was made about the risks to this process, I think it's important for all of us to be realistic on the risks. We are living at a time of increased conflict, and therefore increased demands on the United Nations and on humanitarian actors. And we are calling for new resources every day. And those resources that we are calling for Ethiopia are in competition with resources being called for Sudan, are in competition with resources being called for Gaza, are in competition with resources being called for Ukraine. Notwithstanding, the UN country team is committed to doing what it can to raise additional resources from the international community to support Tigray. But one of the reasons why this program is extremely important for us is because effective utilization of those resources depends on effective governance. And if we cannot demonstrate that the resources are properly utilized, mobilization of additional resources will be much more difficult. And so I hope that this is not taken as some academic exercise in order to tick a box about governance reform. I hope that this is considered to be an opportunity to demonstrate that internally within the region, at the various levels, there is an effective governance structure that is in a position to work with the United Nations and of course other federal organizations, because you are part of Ethiopia, to be able to deliver what you need to help you to overcome the current challenge. Reconstruction is going to take years. It's not going to be a year. It is going to take years because mobilizing those resources is going to take a lot of time. How you go about this process, what you consider to be your priorities for governance reform, that is all part of the design of the project. That's why I said that this is your project. It is not an imposition from the United Nations. But we hope that as we mobilize support for you at the end of this process, you would be able to demonstrate that not only have you overcome the challenge of the war, but that you are in a position to build back better and better than before. And it is sincerely our hope that we can accompany you to do that without getting involved in the decision of who does what structure do we have, what do we decide to prioritize, at what point in time we are going to focus on digital transformation. Those are your decisions. That's what this whole process of developing this program is about. But we will continue to do what we can to mobilize the resources to make it happen. We do have some, otherwise we wouldn't be here to launch this. But it will not be adequate to do what we need to do. Whether we will be able to generate more of those resources will depend on the responses we get from you. Because your participation and your good faith in this process is key to our ability to make it happen. And my colleagues, Dr. Ramiz Alakbarov and Sam, who is in charge of UNDP, it is the country teams that are involved in the implementation of UN projects and programs. My office is, as I said, it's a regional office, so it doesn't get involved in the operational part of this. But because we were part of the COHA as observers, and therefore we're able to see firsthand not only what the provisions of the agreement are, but the implications in terms of what needed to be done, we have been working together, and of course with the interim regional administration, and we very much appreciate their cooperation, to keep the momentum going, to make sure that notwithstanding all of the challenges we face in terms of resource mobilization, we can keep this thing moving to get to a positive outcome. And I hope that, as I said, we will be able to do that with you in the months to come. Thank you.
Questions. And I think Madam Special Envoy had already stressed some of the areas. First thing I want to underscore here is that every post-conflict context presents an opportunity for renewal, and transformation. And this is why we are all here. You have an opportunity after a devastating conflict to say, how shall we be as a people of Tigray? This is the conversation that is being held. Whether you want renewal and transformation, or you want renewal alone, it's a conversation that probably, and that's why at the outset of this exercise, our colleague Robin spent several weeks here to have that conversation with you and say, what should be the extent of the transformation that you desire in the system of governance? The second point I want to stress is that I think all of us know that the core target of any conflict is the collapse of the institutional fabric of a society. The source of stability of society is its institution. And that is what conflicts tend to target. And that's why the initial intervention has to respond to that, to reset some basic fabrics of institution. So I think the colleague from the TPLF asked the question, why do we want a long-term reform when we have immediate recovery needs? And I think the way the project is designed is to do the two together. So there will be quick impact intervention to reset, to set up offices, whether it's in the judiciary, or whether it's in civil service, or whether it's in the justice sector as well, or in the governance sector, the oversight governance sector, public administration. So we have the quick wins that we are hoping 5 million cannot just be spent on assessment. The bulk of it will be on resetting basic needs in those institutions that have been identified. Already, I think many of you probably know that UNDP is here working with the Bureau of Finance, Dr. Tawadros and many others, in doing basic stabilization of institutions that provide services to the people. Local government institutions. I was here last week and visited some of the Waridas where we are working to help re-establish those institutions. The gains made in that would now be complemented by the resources we get from this project. And lastly, again, is to emphasize this is a conversation internally here. All we are doing as a UN system is to accompany these efforts. And this is not just the end, the design phase will continue, and we want to encourage all of you to play a key role in determining the path you want to take in resetting your institutional governance agenda. Thank you.
One thing I would want to address that was mentioned by Dr. Alganesh, and in a way it's been touched by Hannah, is the management of the risks when it comes to implementing the programs that we are to design. The fundamental and the major risk mentioned in Fasaha's presentation was security. He mentioned the war in Sudan, the Gulf, the region, or the internal wars in Ethiopia as source of major risks to whatever we want to do in terms of building our institutions and our democratic governance systems. I have an idea about it, and I would want to express it in front of you, Hannah, because, I mean, it's Tigray represented here. We have the entire cabinet and the government. We have the opposition parties, civil society organizations, and a lot more. The way we see it here, yes, it's a major source of risks in Tigray. There are internal risks which we are managing, and we believe we can handle them. Most of them are to do with our own internal economic and political deficiencies. But when it comes to the external risks, the way we look at them is that, yes, there is issue with Sudan, which you are handling appropriately. All the files are in your desks. But in Tigray, we believe we are different in that we have a plan, an agreement on how to sort out our problems. That's the Pretoria Agreement. The Pretoria Agreement gives us the opportunity to reconstitute ourselves, reconstitute our region, our political institutions, while at the same time, it also gives us the capacity to be of meaningful deterrence. That's how I would put it. If we ensure that this agreement is fully and properly implemented, we also believe that it discourages most of the spoilers that are the cause of the regional security problems from going or choosing war as an option to address whatever they have. They have a lot of crazy ideas about expanding territories, acquiring whatever they want to acquire. But if Tigray stays peaceful, neutral, protected, then the possibility of any one of them reconsidering their projects are high. And that's where the UN, and especially Hannah, you never signed the deal, but you witnessed it. And we have the other parties as well, would help us push through, help us reconstitute our region and our institutions through the implementation of the cessation of hostilities. And you will see how that implementation contributes to the deterrence and pacification of the region. That's how I would want to wrap our sessions today. Thank you very much. And now I hand it over to Waitom, who will tell us on what next to be done next. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellencies. Please receive all the dignitaries to their seat.
Exercise where we are giving you an idea of what needs to be done here in Tigray if we are going to go for a kind of political transformation that these people so richly deserve. And then we have to start by the simple exercise of looking into what can be done, what sort of institutional setup and framework would be necessary and all that. So I don't think this exercise is going to replace whatever is going to happen once an elected government is in place. I don't expect an elected government to roll back on whatever achievements this interim administration may have achieved or plans to achieve. And I don't expect the fact that an interim administration is interim to simply mean that they should stay put and expect some kind of elected government in the months or years to come would undertake this responsibility. So whatever we do here, it is an exercise which is aimed at least having a clear understanding of the kinds of governance, justice, and other institutional-related challenges we face as a people. And it's not going to be an easy ride. It is not an exercise which can be shoved down our throats by the UN or by the federal government or by anyone for that matter. It is an exercise in which all of us, all the stakeholders, parties in Tigray, existing and other parties which could be in the pipeline, would have to take part in it. Civil society should also be actively involved in this process. And this is simply a start of an exercise, although the whole reform agenda, the whole slogan about undertaking reforms has been in place for as long as I remember. What we are trying to do here is to try and implement what ever vision we had in the past in a manner that would involve all stakeholders. And even so, despite our best of intentions and efforts, will not be in a position to involve all stakeholders. So whatever deficiencies there could be in this process, we'll have to offset them by allowing whatever space is possible for civil society organizations and political parties or other stakeholders to not necessarily arm twisting us into entertaining their ideas, but at least opening the forum for them to be heard and for everyone to be able to say whatever they believe is going to be the best interest of Tigray and to do so in a manner that will contribute to not detract from this commitment. So yes, we have tons of things to do. And so the whole idea of political transformation cannot be achieved unless Tigray has achieved the fullest measure of its self-determination rights. And whether this is done within the context of the Ethiopian Federation or in a different context is an entirely different matter. For now, Tigray needs to secure its borders in the context of the Ethiopian constitution, and the only thing that now links the Tigray state with the federal government is the Pretoria arrangement. So we have to work hard to achieve the full implementation of Pretoria agreement. We'll continue to maintain our not just resolve, but also continue to work on what we have, so that we'll be in a position to address the other remaining challenges. Of course, we have engagements in the few days and probably the few weeks that will take stock of the achievements so far, however modest they might be, and of course the kinds of challenges ahead, and we'll hopefully be in a position to address the remaining challenge in a manner that would deepen peace and at the same time address the concerns of our people, the return of IDPs, and the securing of Tigray's constitutionally mandated territory, and for the internal administration to be able to extend its reach all over those areas. And that requires a concerted effort on the part of all stakeholders in Tigray, not just the IRA and TPLF, but more importantly, all those who have a say and should have a say in this process. Ultimately, it's about securing the interest of our people, and we hope and expect the international community, the UN system included, and on a personal level, people like Hannah, to be part of this process and to do whatever they can to make sure that the Pretoria Agreement is indeed implemented and fully. I hereby declare what this process, this exercise, officially launched, and launching the process would require more engagement with all stakeholders, more involvement with all partners, and of course, all the questions that have been raised today will continue to be raised, and no one can dare answer all the questions and satisfactorily. So we should continue to engage so that we will ultimately find answers to our problems on our own. And I think this engagement was worth our while, and our continued engagements will help us in rounding out whatever rough edges there are, and ultimately to be able to secure the interests of the people of Tigray in a manner that ensures the sustainability of the Tigrayan state and its being able to be back on its feet again. Thank you.
Because of the justice chain, political parties here present, my dear special envoy for the Horn of Africa, for the United Nations, my boss, the resident coordinator and humanitarian coordinator, other colleagues from the UN system here present, civil society organizations, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. On behalf of Engineer Asifa, my UNDP colleagues, and the
there are some risk factors which we believe that
project, I extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for gracing this occasion with your presence and unwavering support. Today marks the beginning of what we hope will be a transformative journey toward building inclusive, accountable, and resilient democratic institutions in Tigray. Your presence here signifies your commitment to the principles of peace, justice, and democracy, and your belief in the inherent potential of the people of Tigray to rebuild and thrive. I would like to express our deepest appreciation to His Excellency, the Regional President, our esteemed guests, including government officials, leaders of political parties, religious leaders, academia, the media, civil society organizations, community representatives, and international partners for your presence and invaluable contribution in shaping the vision and objectives of this project. And as stressed, my colleague Robin was here, and all of you participated in the design of what we have seen here today. Therefore, I also want to, on behalf of the resident coordinator, thank Robin Coppin, who is not here with us, but who worked assiduously to make this project possible. I extend my heartfelt thanks to the Special Envoy Hannah Tete and Dr. Ramis, the UN Resident Coordinator, for your leadership in driving this partnership. Your continued commitment to promoting peace, justice, and human rights is truly commendable and serves as a beacon of hope for communities affected by conflict in Ethiopia and the Horn of Africa region. Finally, I would like to thank the people of Tigray for their courage, resilience, determination to rebuild their lives and communities in the aftermath of a devastating conflict. Your voices, your hopes, your dreams inspired everyone who visits this region. As we embark on this journey together, let us remain steadfast in our commitment to upholding the principles of democracy, transparency, and accountability that are at the heart of the broader reforms led by the federal government. Together, you can create a future where every voice is heard, every right is respected, and every individual can realize their potential. Thank you once again for your unwavering support and dedication. Now the path is cleared by His Excellency the President to deliver on the promise outlined in this project. Let us all get to work to make this happen. Thank you.